Hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining our webinar today, Giving Tuesday, Harnessing the Power of a Global Movement for Local Action. I am Tory Martin. I'm the Director of Communications and Engagement for the Johnson Center for Philanthropy. For those of you who may be new to us, we are a university-based center for philanthropy, and we focus on applied research and capacity building for nonprofits and foundations of all types. We're going to start with a couple quick logistical items. If you have any technical issues during the presentation, please let us know via the Ready Talk chat box that's in the lower left-hand corner of your screen. We've got my colleague Karen Hoekstra here who is going to be able to help you figure out anything that might come along. We are also going to be holding any questions until the end of the conversation today, but you can feel free to send them to us via that Q&A box in the corner at any point, and we will go ahead and gather them and keep them until the end of the conversation. So please feel free to go ahead and do that. So I just wanted to kind of give you a quick sense of where this webinar is coming from. So at the Johnson Center, we really look at philanthropy as an ecosystem, one that is one sector that includes every player and stakeholder. So that's nonprofits, foundations, family foundations, individual donors, large-scale donors, volunteers, and the many organizations at the local, national, and even international level that are involved in moving us all forward in our social change missions. And as a part of that ecosystem, we're really looking at opportunities to kind of have one conversation amongst ourselves on the issues that matter to all of us. So we call these sort of 3-month digital series Field Focus. We did one earlier this year on data and the sector, how philanthropy uses data to better understand itself and to improve the quality and efficacy of our work. And this fall, from October through December, we are doing Field Focus Local Action. That is a very broad focus intended to look at all of the ways that individuals and organizations plug into the communities they care about and make change. So we are really proud and excited to be able to share this content with you. You are always able to find this and kind of frequently updated content on our website, johnsoncenter.org/fieldfocus. You'll find things there like this webinar, which we are recording today, and we'll be putting up on YouTube later this afternoon and sending out a link to everyone in case you can't see it. Sorry, I'm getting a note in the background that I'm a little hard to hear, so turning up my volume and moving the microphone closer to me. Please let us know if there remain to be any problems there. But we were really thinking about Giving Tuesday as kind of a timely subject that is obviously a key component of this kind of question of local action. In its almost 7 years now of operations, Giving Tuesday has helped people in communities in over 150 countries get connected with their communities and to think about their philanthropy in new ways. At a time of year that has traditionally been more about getting, it's an opportunity to really think about how we give our time, talent, and treasure. So we decided that we would go ahead and dig into this kind of more specific aspect of Giving Tuesday, which is community campaigns. These are campaigns that are really focused on a more local or regional opportunity. They're more themed to specific areas and specific nonprofit communities. So we actually are part of our own community campaign here in Grand Rapids, Michigan, where we're based, which is called GR Gives. And we have been up and running for, I believe this is our 3rd year. We have 3,000 nonprofits in the Grand Rapids area and over 300 that are involved in GR Gives. But you know, we've faced our fair share of challenges to get this campaign up and running, and we figured that this would be a great opportunity for us as capacity builders to bring together some national level leaders on community campaigns to learn from them about what's worked in their areas. So we are going to get a quick start here with a quick poll. Have you ever helped lead or participated in a local community-based Giving Tuesday campaign? You can go ahead and click yes or no. That will just give us a sense of who is on board with us today. Just give that a minute for everyone to get their responses in. Well, this is pretty cool. It's looking like we're just about even in terms of yes and no. So this is going to be new to a ton of people and kind of fresh ground for others. Great. Thank you so much for putting in responses to that. We are leaning towards those who are already involved in community campaigns, which is great. So I'm sure we'll get some wonderful questions out of everyone and their experiences, as well as questions from people for whom this is a little bit more new. So we are going to go ahead and hand this off to our panelists. We have 3 phenomenal panelists today. We're going to start with Jamie McDonald, who is the founder and CEO of Generosity, Inc. She's been an advisor at the national level and has been involved with Giving Tuesday since its beginning. Jamie is a social sector entrepreneur and the founder of Generosity, Inc. She advises socially motivated executives and visionaries driving large-scale change. She works for the Belfer Center for Innovation and Social Impact at the 92nd Street Y as part of the Giving Tuesday team, where she supports more than 100 community leaders for local campaigns. Jamie joined the Giving Tuesday team after leading 3 large Giving Tuesday campaigns that cumulatively raised $20 million, including the #BeMoreGivesMore campaign for Baltimore in 2013. She has also helped host a summit for community campaign leaders and is really in the position to kind of have a broad 30,000-foot view of how these campaigns move overall. So we are then going to move into Amy Jacobs, the Executive Director of Share Charlotte, and Betsy Reed, who joins us from GA Gives in Georgia. So I'm going to hand this off to Jamie. Jamie, take it away.
Thanks so much, Tory. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, everything sounds good to me. Okay,
great. So welcome to all of you in Grand Rapids and I'm guessing beyond. It's exciting to have a chance to talk about Giving Tuesday from a community campaign perspective. I'm guessing based on just the audience that some of you, the word community campaign might be being interpreted different ways by different people. And when we talk about it at Giving Tuesday, we're generally talking about those leaders that are leading coalition campaigns in a geographic area. So we're talking about cities, states, and towns across the U.S., big and small. And but many of the lessons that we're going to talk about today, because I'm guessing some of you are also just nonprofit leaders who are in essence creating your own communities around your nonprofits, which is great. And a lot of the lessons that we'll talk about today apply whether you're talking about a coalition campaign or building a coalition for your individual nonprofit. But as Tory said, you know, I really started like you. So I was somebody who, you know, back in 2012, the year that Giving Tuesday launched, had a software community engagement online giving platform called GiveCore, and just in the social media channels started to see this, you know, Giving Tuesday messaging coming across. And I was really inspired by this idea of sort of taking back the giving season on the heels of Black Friday and Cyber Monday. And so I jumped in, and that's really a hallmark of Giving Tuesday, that we're really all about the hand raisers. We don't go out and find people to participate. We really try to uplift the people that raise their hands to become part of the movement. And I was one of those people. And so in the first year in 2012, when, you know, nobody had ever heard of Giving Tuesday, there were about 200 of us around the country who got involved. But by 2013, we were so excited by what we had seen, how much interest Giving Tuesday had generated in 2012, that we decided to bring our little city together, Baltimore, and put together a coalition of folks who, from our United Way and our Jewish Federation and our Community Foundation and a couple of others, and said, what if we tried to be the most generous city in America on Giving Tuesday and raise $5 million? Now, the little inside secret was I wasn't sure there was going to be any other city campaign that year, so I was pretty sure that we were going to be the most generous city, which I thought was going to be a win in and of itself. But, you know, we knew the $5 million was a stretch, because at that point, Giving Tuesday was not what it is today. But we not only did that because of how inspired people were by the idea, we raised $5.7 million. And many of the lessons that I'm going to be sharing today are lessons that came out of my own experience, but then combined with my experience of now working with more than 100 communities around the country on Giving Tuesday campaigns. So I joined the Giving Tuesday team officially in late 2014 after I sold my company. And at the time, there were 8 community campaigns. This past year, we had 106 campaigns. This year, we estimate that we'll have somewhere between 120 and 130 community campaigns. And as I mentioned, they range from tiny, tiny towns in places all across the country to full states. And you've got on the phone today Betsy Reed, who leads our Georgia campaign, which is a statewide campaign. Amy is the head of our Charlotte campaign, which is a city campaign. I was obviously, from a city campaign, but we also see campaigns in tiny towns and in counties across the country. What we love about it, and this graphic gives you a good sense of it, is that we are all about unbranding. And so we're not trying to say, go and use the Giving Tuesday logo in exactly this way and use this platform and use this way of doing things. We're like, take Giving Tuesday and use it as a platform to inspire generosity for your cause or your community. Use it the way that is going to resonate most effectively with your audience, because you're the one that knows best what's going to inspire people to give. But take advantage of the news cycle, because Giving Tuesday, we're going to talk about this in a minute, is a day that is sort of high volume on the giving calendar, and you want to be in that conversation. Some things that surprise people, beyond the unbranding concept is that, Giving Tuesday is very specifically Giving Tuesday, not Fundraising Tuesday. We are not a fundraising day. We are a day that is meant to inspire generosity from individuals around the world. And while many of you are thinking about local impact on the ground, this is a movement that now is the largest social movement in the world. We are last year in 200 countries and territories with, as of right now, 51 official country partners. So those would be partners kind of like our community campaign leaders that have basically raised their hands to lead a community. The rest of that action around the globe happens organically, and we track all that through social media. We're really about the power of giving together. So what makes Giving Tuesday unique is not just that it's a day for individual generosity, but it's a day that we can kind of share our helper's high with other people and experience what it feels like to give together. We also are absolutely focused on the fact that giving is something that can take place in lots of forms. Yes, many people give money, but many people also give time, they give their skills, they give their voice, and all of those are equally valued by our Giving Tuesday team. We like to be inclusive of all kinds of partners. So across the world, we work with nonprofits and NGOs and companies and small businesses. We work with, with sort of on-the-ground leaders, and we work with, governments and countries. So it's really a day that is about giving in all forms, and that's part of why we've been able to grow and learn. We really emphasize creativity and collaboration, and we know firsthand that leaders emerge in unexpected places, like many of you on the phone. So let me give you a couple of facts, because I know that that even though you guys are all here, sometimes there are boards or collaborators that need, the facts and figures to sort of get excited about your Giving Tuesday effort. So I'm going to take you through a couple of the key stats that, that'll help you understand really the breadth and scope of Giving Tuesday. And feel free to, as was mentioned at the beginning, if you have questions about any of these, I can come back and answer them in the Q&A. I'm going to go through pretty fast, so just drop them down in the Q&A box. So for those people that are still on the fence, Giving Tuesday now is one of only 3 days of the year where donors are looking for nonprofits to support. So just think about that for a minute. You probably can guess the other two, December 30th and December 31st. The other 362 days of the year, nonprofits are out there trying to find donors. On this day, this is a day when donors are looking for a nonprofit to support, and you want to be in that conversation. The second is that we really are reaching scale in the U.S. So last year there was more than $300 million raised just online, just in the U.S. We believe that's just a fraction of overall global generosity, although we don't have a way to measure this in many of the countries that we reach into around the world. And we don't have a way right now of measuring offline giving, so the giving that is given in kind, in drives, in checks, in non-digital forms. But it's an incredible growth rate in just a few short years to really become the biggest day of the year on many of the online giving platforms around the country. For a long time, we were the second biggest day of the year or the third biggest day of the year. But now by the number of donors, we are the largest day of the year on many of the online giving platforms around the country. So our numbers are somewhat smaller than December 31st, about 25% less, because Giving Tuesday is a day when new donors and many younger donors jump into giving. And so it's important to kind of think about them as a potential audience for your efforts. But it's really become sort of a gateway to giving for a whole generation of people around the world. And a question that we always get is, is that giving that's happening on Giving Tuesday taking away from, year-end giving? And we do lots of research, but, I won't quote ours because it might seem biased, but I'll use a good bit of data that was put out by our friends at Network for Good. They looked back over 2 years of, sorry guys, they looked back over 2 years of data, 4 years of data from all givers in December, and they found that givers that participated in Giving Tuesday and raised money in December raised 14 times more than folks that just raised money in December but didn't participate in Giving Tuesday. And this is just one platform, but this data is found consistently across platforms that we work with around the U.S. And the reason is not just because Giving Tuesday in and of itself is the reason that people are raising this much more. It's that nonprofits that focus on December as a season of giving instead of just December 31st as a day of giving do better, because when you ask more, you get more. I mentioned a moment ago that it's the biggest day of the year in terms of number of donors, and that implies that there are some smaller gifts that happen on Giving Tuesday. And so I like to really make the point that it's really important not to underestimate the power of Giving Tuesday as a day to attract smaller givers. You probably recognize this guy on the bottom, Michael Bloomberg, but that's a picture of him on the top in the year he graduated from Johns Hopkins University in 1972. And in that year, he gave $5 to Johns Hopkins when he was asked about the equivalent of $32 today. Well, fast forward, whatever number of years, 40-some years later, and Michael Bloomberg has cumulatively given $2.3 billion to Johns Hopkins University. He's created their School of Public Health. He's a benefactor that, has really been a difference maker in the trajectory of that school. And so take a moment and think about how you treat your $32 giver, because you'll get a lot of those kind of gifts on a day like Giving Tuesday. Are you treating them like a future Michael Bloomberg, or are they simply getting a tax receipt in the mail or by email with no real appreciative communication? So yes, Giving Tuesday is going to attract some smaller donors, but you have a real opportunity to make your mark with them and to nurture them to become larger donors. The next key data point that we like to, and I know this is kind of a wonky data scientist sort of chart, but what it essentially is saying is that Giving Tuesday provides a net lift without a corresponding lull, that it acts in many ways the same way that disaster giving acts in the course of the year, that people that give in the context of a disaster, it doesn't take away from any other giving that they might give throughout the year, and Giving Tuesday functions that same way. And then a final just sort of point of information, and we're going to be sharing some data in the next month or so that'll sort of back this up with some data. But there's a myth in the nonprofit sector about donor fatigue, and the truth is that there is no such thing as donor fatigue. What donors get tired of is bad communications. They get tired of stories that are, uninspiring, that aren't moving, that don't reach their hearts or their funny bones. Those are the two things that really drive people to engage. And so it's really worth taking a step back, and we're going to talk about some of the ways I think that you can improve this. But it's really worth taking a step back and looking critically at your own asks and figure out if you're being inspiring to people. Because the truth is, this sort of idea of the wide-eyed, please give is not what we find actually inspires people to give. That they want to give because they want to matter in the life of somebody else. And so you have an opportunity to help them understand how they can do that through your outreach. So what are the four things that, if we have to boil it all down, makes a community campaign or a nonprofit campaign successful? And we have a much deeper dive on all this, but because we're keeping this relatively short, I'm going to go through these quickly. But the number one thing is an inspired leader who is really the central quarterback of a campaign, who's thinking about who else is on the team, who's thinking about what activities and timelines you need to follow, who's pulling in ambassadors and other resources, and is the one that's sort of making sure that the campaign really, performs as they hope it will. The second is authenticity. In your brand, in your approach, you want to be really clear about the fact that this is a real organization and that, again, you're touching hearts, you're changing lives, and the people who are receiving your messaging can play a role in that. And so that means if you don't have access to a professional photographer to do amazing photographs, go for authentic over perfect every single time. Think about how, don't like overmanage your messaging. Let people know very directly how they can make a difference in someone else's life, and pull that all together with sort of firsthand stories of people whose lives have been changed because they've intersected with your organization or your campaign. The next is to have a clear, ambitious goal. Goals really serve as sort of the party theme for your campaign, and not because they're, something that you should take lightly, but because they really become the framework for all of your thinking. If you know that your goal is that you want to attract, 100 new donors on Giving Tuesday, then that becomes a framework for decision making. You're not going to make the same decisions that you'd make if your goal was to, raise $50,000 on Giving Tuesday. That goal would provide a different framework. And so the analogy that I often use is it's kind of like deciding, that you're going to have a St. Patrick's Day party. If that's the party theme that you choose, then you're not going to, decorate with sombreros, right? When you go to the Party City entrance, you know exactly what aisle to go to when you know the theme of your party. Your goal serves as that same decision-making framework, not just for what to do, but also for what not to do. You guys are all too busy to spend a lot of time doing things that aren't really clearly taking you toward a goal. The next thing is collaboration, and I know a couple of our co-presenters are going to talk about collaborators, but collaborators can come in all different forms. They can be ambassadors who are, spreading the word in your campaign. They can be small businesses who do collaborations with you in the context of your campaign. They can be other nonprofits that come together as a group, or other communities that come together as a group. One of the things that Amy will probably talk about is that they've teamed up with a nearby county and they're supporting each other's efforts this year. So collaboration is one of the ways that on this busy, day with high volume nonprofit sharing, that you can really amplify the messaging of your campaign. Because at the end of the day, while we're focused on Giving Tuesday as the subject of this webinar, the reason we are all passionate about Giving Tuesday is because we're working to build communities that are stronger, safer, smarter, and healthier, and ultimately a more generous and just civil society. With that, let me turn it over to Amy.
Thank you so much, Jamie. This is Tory again, just popping in. Really appreciate that very thorough coverage, and I might add eminently quotable, so I really appreciate that. I just want to give everyone a quick introduction to Amy. Amy Jacobs is the Executive Director of Share Charlotte in Charlotte, North Carolina. Her career began in financial services, where she held various roles, leading large-scale transformational change initiatives for nearly 15 years. Amy left this field in 2015 to pursue her passion for philanthropy and bring her talent for operations and marketing to the Charlotte community. She was introduced to Share Charlotte through her involvement with Women's Impact Fund and volunteered to manage Share's second annual Giving Tuesday CLT community-wide giving campaign. Amy joined the Share Charlotte team full-time in 2015 to lead their 3 annual campaigns and was honored by the Charlotte Hornets with the Walmart Playmaker Award for being, quote, a force for good in her community. Amy, take it away. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thank you so much. Can you guys hear me okay?
You are good to go.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for inviting us to be part of this wonderful conversation. We're really excited, and we're so excited for this year's Giving Tuesday as well. So thank you for the introduction. I'm going to go ahead and advance to the next slide. Let me know if for whatever reason my controls aren't working. So the first thing I wanted to share just quickly is to give you guys an overview of the nonprofit landscape here in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is Mecklenburg County. We have a little over 1 million residents in the county. That's an estimation of 2018 population. Many of you probably know Charlotte is growing like crazy, which is wonderful, but it also, of course, brings with it a variety of challenges as we continue to grow, outgrow our infrastructure and things like that. But what it's doing also is creating a very thriving sector of nonprofits and creating a lot of need and also a lot of opportunities for new nonprofits to come on the scene and to help address some of the issues that are, kind of going on in Charlotte. And so the reason, talk about Share Charlotte in just a moment, but there's about 4,200 registered 501c3s in our county. And so that includes churches, hospitals, schools. I think we have 900 churches in the Charlotte-Mecklenburg area. So it also includes the population of what we call hands-on service nonprofits. So those nonprofits who are mission-based, who serve the community in a variety of ways, supporting the environment, military, children, animals, et cetera. And so when our founder, Kelly Brooks, moved to Charlotte about 10 years ago, she was trying to navigate our nonprofit community scene, online, trying to figure out what was a program, what was a service, which nonprofits were in which space. And she struggled to kind of easily find the nonprofit she was looking for. And so she decided to do something about it, like all strong, courageous women do. And so she founded Share Charlotte in 2012. And what Share is a one-stop shop to connect to more than 450 local nonprofits in the Charlotte-Mecklenburg area. And so if you're curious, check us out. The web address is sharecharlotte.org, and we're actually expanding to other communities. So if you guys are interested in, anyone's interested in that, you like our model and things like that, please let me know. So sidebar. But so Share Charlotte was founded in 2012, and we quickly realized that we had an opportunity to, over several instances, help unite our nonprofit community, and the first opportunity to do that was Giving Tuesday. And so our first Giving Tuesday CLT community-wide campaign effort was in 2014, and we had a small goal. I think it was $500,000, and we ended up raising about $600,000 of overall value for our nonprofit partners. And so everyone on our team has a marketing and corporate background, and so we said, there's something here with our ability to kind of create this platform, this marketing campaign for our nonprofit community, and then just allow them to plug into it as an easy way for them to approach how to kind of plug into this growing global movement. Even at that time, it was obvious that Giving Tuesday was going to become a thing. And so I just advanced to my next slide here. So as I mentioned, Giving Tuesday CLT was born in 2014. I think we were one of the first 8 or 10 formalized communities. We met Jamie McDonald back then, and had a great relationship with the Giving Tuesday folks since then. And so every year we got a little bit better, and I'll talk in a moment about my lessons learned, kind of the things that we found have been most successful in our community particularly. But in 2016, we were actually the largest community campaign in the world. And what's really unique about that is that Charlotte has this passion for working together and collaborating. They just needed an organization or a person or, a group of people to kind of raise their hands and say, we will organize this on behalf of our community, and then just let the nonprofits do what they do best, which is tell their individual stories inside of this structure that we built within Giving Tuesday called Giving Tuesday CLT. And so our role really in our community is really to build this branding, right? So establish what is Giving Tuesday CLT. We feel like we're Giving Tuesday cheerleaders 24 hours a day, 365 days a week or a year, really educating our community first on what is Giving Tuesday. And so because it's such a grassroots movement, there are no national billboards and national commercials and things like that. So first kind of level setting with our community why Giving Tuesday was a really cool thing and why our community should pay attention to it, and then what Giving Tuesday CLT as Charlotte's local response to this global movement really meant. And so we have built toolkits and branding that's specific to our community that plays off of, as you can see, the Giving Tuesday CLT. We still include the Giving Tuesday heart. And so we figured out how to take this global branding and these global tools and personalize them for the Charlotte community along with the hundreds of nonprofits that participate every year. And then partnerships are really king in Charlotte. And I don't know if it's something about the South or if it's just because really the community relies so heavily on relationships in order to, cause positive social change. And so partnerships in our community have been instrumental in getting Giving Tuesday CLT off the ground and helping it have the cumulative $20 million impact that we've had over the last 4 years. This is our 5th Giving Tuesday CLT. So really our role, it's fun, it's a lot of work, but we're here to stir up a giant conversation about good. And so we're the eminent cheerleaders for Giving Tuesday CLT. We begin talking about this annually in around July. And we work on building partnerships with local companies and corporations and bringing together all different facets of our communities, nonprofits, community organizations, corporations, small businesses, local influencers, the media, all bringing people together into this one conversation about why the community should care about the nonprofit sector in Charlotte and how small gifts, many small gifts, can be really impactful, especially around a time as Giving Tuesday. And so I'm going to go into my lessons here. So the first one is that someone needs to step up and lead, especially if you have a community that has around 1 million people and as many nonprofits as we do. We're just so uniquely positioned to do this. I know there are not a lot of Share Charlottes that exist out there in the world, but many communities have United Way that's leading their campaign or a community foundation that's leading their campaign, and they've had a lot of success with that. They are able to amass the right number of resources and influential people to kind of help get the conversation started and equip the nonprofits in their community with the ability to form some of these partnerships and relationships that they might not have otherwise been able to achieve. And so I know it's much easier said than done to find a leader in your community and ask them to step up. But if you do have an organization that's particularly positioned to raise their hand and lead, it can be really powerful and really impactful in your community. The next lesson learned, and I hit on this a little bit already, but sponsorships and partnerships are key. What we have found in Charlotte is that sponsors, especially corporate sponsors, I don't know if you noticed on my first slide, Giving Tuesday CLT was presented by Wells Fargo. So we have corporations here who are really interested in being part of, from a branding perspective and from an entire organizational perspective, this giant conversation about good that we're working on. And so we have had a lot of success in getting them interested in really just figuring out how to plug in, how to engage their employees, how to put their branding all over the information that we provide. We do toolkits, as I mentioned. We produce thousands of pieces of print collateral that all the nonprofits distribute throughout the week of Giving Tuesday CLT, and their branding is all over that. And so if you can imagine a company wanting to have an instant connection with supporting their entire local nonprofit community, a Giving Tuesday community campaign is a great way to align their brand with something like that. And then we do a lot of partnership building that has no financial connection. So small businesses here want to adopt a nonprofit for the week of Giving Tuesday CLT and simply help them from a social media perspective or offer a match. For example, our mall here, South Park Mall, which is a Simon property, they're going to give a $1,000 shopping spree to a nonprofit client if the nonprofit can raise $1,000. And so, that's a really cool story. And it's an organization, the mall, leveraging resources that they have, right? Tons of gift cards for their own retailers. And then the nonprofit can use that challenge to really help amplify their needs and get their community to raise $1,000 to send a family that they serve on a shopping spree around Christmas. And so those are the types of partnerships that we're constantly looking for and helping broker on behalf of our nonprofit partners. And then finally, the last lesson learned is that you really need both grassroots and traditional marketing approaches. So we don't have a huge budget for Giving Tuesday CLT. We do have sponsorship dollars, as I mentioned, that helps us offset the cost. But so a lot of the things we have to do are very grassroots. We do a lot of influencer engagement. So who are the social media kings and queens in Charlotte who have a ton of influence, who we can form relationships with, and who we can talk to about how they can use their powers for good in our community. And so social media, as you guys know, is largely free. So who are people in your community that you can ask to help influence both your community-wide campaign or an individual ask that a nonprofit might have? We do T-shirts every year. So we partner with a local T-shirt shop, and they create a T-shirt that says "Do Good" or "Give Good" or whatever kind of messaging we're really working on that campaign. And then they sell the T-shirts, we sell the T-shirts, the nonprofits wear the T-shirts, and so T-shirts can be $10, $12. So it's not a very expensive way to help really kind of continue the conversation all over Charlotte on having people wear these shirts. We do tons of contests. We focus a lot on things local. So our skyline is is something that people in Charlotte really relate to, and so we use photography of the Charlotte skyline in a lot of the promotional materials we do. We decorate statues that are all over our community in goofy costumes and things like that just kind of get people to look at them and say, oh, why does that statue have on a Do Good T-shirt and is carrying a bunch of purple balloons? And so really just think about what things in your community that you can do that are grassroots, that are relatively inexpensive, that can turn heads and get people to say, I wonder what that is. And then, of course, a mix of traditional marketing. Media with the right pitch is really interested in a community-wide Giving Tuesday approach. We do spend some money on promotional materials, as I mentioned. We do a lot of advertising throughout local publications about what is Giving Tuesday CLT and why is it important. And then we also do a lot of influencing for matching gifts. So while we don't collect matching gifts as a campaign, as a central campaign, we do influence heavily different organizations, offer matches to the nonprofits or causes they support as incentives for those nonprofits to use to go and raise their own money. And so just a lot of different ways that we do both grassroots and traditional marketing. And if anyone wants to know more, I know we're going to do a Q&A at the end, but please feel free to reach out to me at any time and pick my brain a little bit about kind of some of the things. We've got a very detailed presentation that I can send you. It's got more information in it about how we kind of approach all of this. So thank you for the time.
Great. Thank you so much, Amy. That was really wonderful. I appreciate you sharing all those lessons learned from Charlotte. We are now going to head off to our third panelist, Betsy Reed. Betsy is Vice President of Marketing and Communications at the Georgia Center for Nonprofits and serves as the state organizing lead for GA Gives on Giving Tuesday. Launched in 2012 as Georgia Gives Day, the annual event evolved into a Giving Tuesday campaign in 2017 and raised more than $20 million for 3,000 plus participating nonprofits to date. Previously, Betsy served in leadership roles at national associations supporting independent artists, with earlier stints as advertising producer and an account executive. I will also take this moment to do a quick reminder, just as Amy did, to go ahead and submit any questions you have for our panelists in the chat box on the lower left-hand corner. All right, thank you. Betsy, take it away.
Thanks, Tori, and hello to everyone. So I'm the newbie here, having started our Giving Tuesday campaign last year, and I'm just mindful of the time. I'm going to talk briefly about the start of what we call Georgia Gives Day, the why and the how of our evolution to Georgia Gives on Giving Tuesday. And then I'm going to share a few of my favorite campaign tactics that we use to energize nonprofits, partners, and the community. And then I'll wrap up with some key learnings. So we started back in 2012 with 4 goals. We wanted to raise awareness of the nonprofits that are working in communities around the state with a very powerful personal appeal. We really wanted to help folks kind of recognize the work that they're doing in the communities and really celebrate nonprofits and the people that work at nonprofits, make it very personal and support them in their work. This was also relatively early days in online fundraising, and we wanted to provide support for nonprofits, especially small and mid-sized ones, to be able to accept online donations, which was why the Giving Day platform idea appealed to us so much. We also wanted to help them learn to leverage the power of social media to inspire supporters. A lot of these nonprofits don't have a marketing team. Sometimes it's their development folks doing it. I mean, we were very aware of the scarcity of resources, but the urgent need to sort of get everyone on board and online. So our plan, and I'm going to move through this quickly because it pretty much reinforces what I said, is to launch this online giving platform that would be open and free to all Georgia-registered nonprofits. You can go to gagives.org and see that. We also felt it was very important to support nonprofits with a lot of training and tools to help them develop their campaigns. And then equally important, especially as a new concept in the community, we brought a lot of committed partners together to help us field a multimedia campaign. We leveraged their experience. We had pro bono partnerships with PR agency, with ad agencies, with media partners. All of those things were instrumental in making this possible. So the impact, we had some really heartening growth over that first 5 years. I mean, our first year we raised around $800,000, and we had a heavy lift of getting this new idea off the ground. We were doing a lot of selling to everybody about how exciting this was. We could cite that there were great Gives Days going on in other states, but it was something brand new for Georgia. So year 1 was the hardest year. 5 years later, we were raising $4 million a year, and just as importantly, we saw in the social media numbers, in the earned media, that we were really reaching people, that there was tons more engagement with each year. So I feel, we had a very successful campaign. And so the question became, why would we make a change? And in 2017, we had some real, sorry, this is corny, but we had some heart-to-hearts. And we looked at Giving Tuesday, which we've been looking at the whole time because it had started up the same year. And as they both grew, and both were sort of successfully growing in their own space, we were really recognizing that it was an increasingly difficult decision for nonprofits about whether to participate in one or both. They were both happening in November. And it was also clear to us, because we really talk partnership and how important that is from the Georgia Center for Nonprofits, that we really felt we could be far more effective by partnering up. And uniting with Giving Tuesday, we had a shared mission and purpose, and it was just time to do that. We wanted to focus our community on one event to kick off that end-of-year giving season, or that season of giving, as Jamie put it. And we also wanted to get past our start as a Giving Day model and broaden participation to be inclusive of all of our state's nonprofits, whether they chose to use the Georgia Gives platform or they wanted to accept donations elsewhere. And then finally, for our team, we were excited about the prospect of joining this global Giving Tuesday community. We wanted to be able to tap into their expertise and resources and learn from other community campaigns around the world, and frankly, the camaraderie that we were looking forward to. And so last July, I reached out. I got a call back from Jamie, and I think it was the next day, Jamie, or 2 days later, they had an event nearby, and I got to meet 50 or so Giving Tuesday community leaders and was thoroughly convinced that we needed to sprint and relaunch of the Giving Tuesday campaign last November. So this is now, we're going into year 2. Sorry, where am I here? So I'm just going to talk about our campaign, really, which focuses on 3 audiences: nonprofits, our partners, and the community. And our work each year is focused on what we can do to activate and energize and support and inspire each of those groups. So I thought I would just share some brief highlights of strategies and tactics that we have found most successful. So for nonprofits, our training is just critical. And we've learned, you can see a picture there on the upper left of our kickoff rally this year. We do a rally in the park in Atlanta. We live stream it. We have a learning event that follows. We were so fortunate that Jamie was able to join us and do the keynote for that. And we had panels of nonprofit leaders who had run successful campaigns. So that is a tremendous sort of kickoff for the community to let them know now's the time. And we've been pushing that earlier and earlier each year. We did it in August this year. Also, we are continually growing a resource library from planning calendars to case studies. We have a campaign graphic toolkit that nonprofits, you can see some examples on the right there of them taking our graphic components and adapting them. As the Giving Tuesday team does, we are open to them taking these and doing whatever they want, making them their own. And then finally, we do a lot of reporting on top takeaways. We do inspiration galleries. We know that nonprofits are all at different levels, different sizes, and we want to be sure we have an array of support for them that kind of meets them where they are. So we also do an email campaign that we start up in June that has a lot of support messages, prize announcements, and we just kind of deliver our information in bite-sized chunks. We're trying not to overwhelm, but to kind of ramp up this activation over a 6-month period. That's already one of my key takeaways. And then last, I just wanted to mention, we started a private Facebook group a couple years ago, and that has grown to 700 members. It has been extremely effective as another channel for our communications, and it's also connecting the campaigning nonprofits so that they have a community and a place where they can bounce off ideas and exchange ideas and build some camaraderie. So for our partners, we are talking about our government officials. That's our governor in the upper left. He proclaims every year, proclaims Georgia Gives on Giving Tuesday, and that is, you know, tremendously exciting to get public officials involved, the mayor of Atlanta, mayors of other cities. We get some of our corporate partners do things like give us a takeover of their billboards. You can see an example of one below. That's a really high trafficked area in Atlanta, big intersection. So we're looking for partners to sort of help us in all ways, big and small. And then our media partners have just been unbelievable. I mean, have gone above and beyond in building the buzz. You can see on the upper right there, one of the local anchors is actually sharing our live tweets on the day of, on their morning newscast. Robin Roberts from Good Morning America did a PSA for us. We get our partners to get involved in our Selfie campaign that we do every year. So it really takes a village, and our partnerships have been growing, and they have been just critical to our success and our growth. And then lastly, it's all about inspiring the community, and Jamie and Amy have both touched on this a lot. Some ideas, some really important, I think, sort of standout initiatives that we've done have been involved with the media, our media partners. So in the center there, you can see that's Jovita Moore. She's one of our very popular local anchors, and she hosts a tweet up on Giving Tuesday, which is a really fun way to get people engaged on social media on the day. The Unselfie campaign that I mentioned, you can see some examples of that below. That Unselfie contest, which we start up in November 1st and runs through the 14th, really gets the community excited about what we're doing. And a lot of that authentic storytelling is coming from them. And it's very personal. As Jamie was saying, you know, there's touching stories and there's ones that touch the funny bone. And they all sort of create this fabric of community that brings them together around Georgia Gives. I also included on the lower right there a couple of sort of social tactics that we've done. We've created a social badge that's kind of like an I vote. We do an I gave. And when someone gives on the platform, that actually pops up and it says, hey, you want to share this with your friends in social. And then on the lower right there, you can see our Facebook frame. So we encourage folks to do that. So we're asking everyone, it's not about asking for them to give money. Throughout November, we're trying to just get them to engage and inspire the community to start talking about this month and what's ahead and ramping it up till Giving Tuesday. So the impact in 2017, we now have over 3,000 nonprofits. We raised $6.8 million last year, and that's a combination of donations on the Georgia Gifts platform and other donation platforms giving in Georgia. And then, you know, as I said earlier, just as importantly is seeing all of the activation, all of the social media engagement, all of the earned media. I mean, those are just as important as metrics for the success of the movement. So to wrap up, here are my takeaways. The first one is start early. Every year, we've pushed up the start of our outreach and our support. We're now starting up in June, and this is feedback that we've consistently gotten from nonprofits each year. So that is critical. And for partnerships, they often have very long lead times. So start reaching out and touching base and touch base throughout the year. It's really, you really need to think of it as a long-term relationship. There have been many partners who have said, we're really interested, but we can't make it work this year, and I just think out a year ahead. Focus for impact. Be selective. This really speaks to capacity. There are always more ideas than capacity, and you need to be selective about what you take on, especially as you get started, and focus your time and energy on what you believe are going to be really kind of high impact initiatives. And then to add on to that, and this is a term that I learned from our PR folks, surprise and delight. So get those essentials for your campaign, make sure that you prioritize those, but leave a little room to experiment with some new ideas, which could become your next really big ideas. And those are also going to refresh and energize your campaign. They're what get people excited and help build the buzz. Rally the team. We have a very small core team. There are 3 of us that work heavily on Georgia Gives. But there are a lot of other folks at the Georgia Center for Nonprofits. And what I have found is that if I can just ask for some help with some bite-sized roles, everyone's really excited about helping out. The kickoff brought our entire staff together. There's about 20 of us, and we needed everyone. It totally takes a village. And we'll be asking for their help on Giving Tuesday as well. And then last but not least, make it homegrown, keep it authentic, run a campaign that expresses the vibes and the values of your state or town, you know, capture that local spirit, and at the same time you're tapping into the energy of this worldwide movement. It's been an incredible journey, and we're really excited about this year. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much, Betsy. That was excellent. We are going to switch now into the questions portion of our conversation. We've got only a little bit of time, about 6 minutes left till 1 o'clock, so we're going to get through these kind of quickly. So the first one that has come in, I'm going to hand off back to you, Betsy, actually, is to wonder, how do you engage the media? You all talked about a lot of really strong media partnerships, I mean, all the way up to Robin Roberts. How do you begin, especially if you are a small organization trying to get this going, a small community, how do you reach out to media to get them involved?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, those were really important partnerships, and I think you need to be very direct. You need to pitch them on the potential impact that they could have in helping to build this movement. I have found, so I would go right to the community affairs folks. Those are the ones that are really like their kind of CSR department, or if they don't, you know, officially have a community affairs team, these are the stories that they like to tell. I mean, they love sharing stories of nonprofits, and you're offering them a partnership to tell an even bigger story, to sort of bring it all together. So I've found that they're really receptive, and you may find that in the first year a media partner may say, well, we'll do a segment on it, but grow that relationship, you know, give it time, and that's what I found to be successful.
Tory, I can add a little bit to that too. This is Jamie.
Please do.
So a couple of things. You know, I think that one thing to recognize is that even print media now needs visuals. So the things that, if you're going to have a Giving Tuesday campaign and you want to attract the media, then you need to have a visual event that they can take pictures of, right? You need to have something that's happening where a reporter can come out and bring a photographer and take pictures, or a local TV station can come out and shoot live. So one of the really critical things is sort of what's the visual that they can attach to the story that you're trying to tell about your campaign. But I would also just make an announcement, if it's useful to you guys. We are having on November 1st a workshop specifically about how to attract local media. And this is a Giving Tuesday webinar. And so you guys, Tory, can share out if you'd like the link. It's open to anyone around the country who wants to participate. And we're going to talk about it from the perspective of both a PR firm that, does this, and also from a group called Public Narrative that helps nonprofits and communities tell their stories effectively to the media. And so, I'd encourage you guys to think about joining that that webinar.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, we're happy to send that out. For anyone who doesn't follow us on Facebook or Twitter already, it is at Johnson Center. So you can find that information through us. We'll send that out soon, or of course through the many Giving Tuesday platforms, where I'm sure you can find it quickly as well. We've also had a couple of questions about how people can find out whether or not there is a community campaign that they can join. Natasha Koss specifically asked about Michigan and whether there are any statewide or local efforts that are at the level of GA Gives. Natasha, unfortunately the answer to that question right now is no. There are no statewide efforts in Michigan that are anywhere near the level of GA Gives. But there are several local efforts that are, if not quite at that level, working on it. A number of them are in mid-Michigan, and of course we have one here in Grand Rapids, GR Gives. But for you and for Bill Erickson, looking for any local giving platforms, you can visit givingtuesday.org/community-campaigns, which will give you kind of a rundown of all of the community campaigns that Giving Tuesday Central knows about, and that will help you kind of locate anything that might be going on in your backyard already. I don't know if any of our three panelists have anything to add to that, since you guys are the experts. Sounds like not. Sounds like we covered it. So good. Those are kind of the three main ones. So we have another question from Ben Dowd. It's October 23rd. We're just kind of learning about this community campaign opportunities. What is the best way to get this going for 2018? Jamie, I'll hand that one to you.
To just get a campaign going? Is that what you mean?
Yes.
You just have to start. I mean, I think that you need to know who your leader is. You've got to set a goal. Again, once you set your goal, so many other things fall into place. If your goal is, again, this depends on whether you're a community campaign leader or a nonprofit, just asking for your individual nonprofit. But but either way, your goal is going to be that framework that helps you make lots of other decisions about your campaign. So, for example, if you're a community campaign, your goal might be a certain number of nonprofit participants and some number of dollars raised, perhaps. If you're an individual nonprofit, there's so many different goals that you could think about. You could think about dollars, of course, but you could think about donors, new donors. You could think about social media followers. You could think about participants in an event. And you can see that depending on the goal you choose, each of those will lead to another set of decisions. So I really think that one of the best ways that you can get going is to sort of organize your team and then start at the end, which basically is what do you hope you're saying you accomplished the day after Giving Tuesday, and then build your plans backwards from there.
Great, and I will add from the perspective of GR Gives, what we've found is really kind of an easy step one is to pick a hashtag for your community that you can at least send out really quickly to organizations that if you have any regional associations like the Association of Fundraising Professionals that have listservs, you can use that to kind of at least get a social media sense of doing something together, especially since we do only have about a month until Giving Tuesday this year. Well, thank you all so much for joining us today. That concludes our webinar on Giving Tuesday. Please do connect with us. You can find all of our information here on this final slide. We really appreciate everyone joining us. And if you have any follow-up questions, do not hesitate to reach out on social media. We will send those along to the appropriate panelists as we get them. So thank you all so much. We'll be sending out a link to the recording of this webinar very soon. Best of luck. Take care.